Hello, I'm Rhiannon Jones and welcome to Showcase, where we bring you all the biggest and best news in art, culture, style and entertainment from here in London to Istanbul and across the world. Coming up on this week's show, iconic fashion designer Dame Zandra Rhodes is with us to chat about her captivating new book and breaking the mould. We take an in-focus look at Japanese artist Chiharu Shiota as she brings her incredible exhibition Between Worlds to the Istanbul Modern. I pop down to the old War Office in London, the home of espionage in Britain, with both MI5 and MI6 running operations there in the past. Now the OO, home to Raffles' latest luxury hotel. And of course, we'll bring you all the latest entertainment news in our weekly snapshot roundup. But first, I went to meet legendary fashion and textile designer Dame Zandra Rhodes at her colourful London penthouse for a chat about her incredible 50 years in the business. And honestly, she's truly fabulous. Dame Zandra Rhodes, thank you so much for inviting Showcase into your rainbow penthouse, just as beautiful, colourful and joyful as we expected it to be, like yourself. Why is colour so important to you, and where did it all begin for you?
I think colour just makes you feel happy. I suppose it all began, I had a very, very colourful mother who, I remember her coming to a school opening in platform green lizard skin shoes. You're talking about the early 50s. Platform shoes and a wonderful hat and a green jacket with check skirts, so she would have looked quite amazing.
And there's a lot of your mother in you, isn't there? You say in your book, which by the way I absolutely devoured, iconic, a fabulous read. You talk a lot about your mother. She was very much your inspiration, wasn't she?
Yes, she was a very inspirational mother who, you know, people like to say to me, didn't you ever do any work at, you know, in holidays? She just let me keep drawing. She didn't say to me, you should be working, whereas my sister, very good of her, went and worked in a canning factory and all sorts of things. And I was just drawing away.
And the art that you have always created, the Zandra Rhodes print that's so iconic and recognisable, when did that vision start for you?
I suppose I went to art college and sort of started to learn to design. Then I went to the Royal College, and of course it was when David Hockney was there, and it was pop art and Warhol and all the incredible colourful influences like that. And I started to do pop art designs and my medal design for Heels fabric. And I suppose that's when the brightness started. And then I put together my first collection of my most exotic prints that I then took to New York to show Diana Vreeland on American Vogue. And I suppose it was colour and big design.
I could rattle off many: Cher, Diana Ross, royalty, Freddie Mercury. Who's the standout name out of a long list to have worn your clothes?
Barbara Streisand opened her show in Hyde Park with my outfit, which was quite fabulous.
Oh, wow. That brings me on to the princesses that you've dressed, because you've dressed no less than 3 princesses. How did that come about? And tell us, first of all, about Princess Anne.
Well, Princess Anne is a really fabulous story, because I get a phone call from English Vogue saying, we're dressing a very important lady, so would you send over some of your most important dresses? I actually thought it was Elizabeth Taylor. So I sent in this wonderful net dress that's all embroidered with seashells. Then I get a phone call maybe a month later from Norman Parkinson, the photographer himself, the great man, and he says, we photographed your dress on Princess Anne and it's going to be used for the publicity. So, but I didn't know until then.
And that was for her royal engagement, wasn't it?
That was to announce her royal engagement.
Wow. And Princess Margaret, very briefly.
Oh, Princess Margaret, well, Princess Margaret was a real princess. She was very grand, and I remember being at wonderful receptions with her, and you always curtsied, and if you went to a reception and she was enjoying herself, you couldn't go till she went. And then I had to go and fit her for an evening dress at the palace, which was quite wonderful.
And she was very different, you say in your book, Iconic, very different to Princess Diana, who you also dressed.
Princess Diana was very natural, you know, because when you went round there were all the children's toys around, and there was this wonderful ugly toy that was a Viking with big horns, and it was on the floor, and I said, "Oh, what's that?" And she said, "Oh, that's William's favourite toy." So there it was, lying around.
So what was she like, Princess Diana?
She was very shy, and she was very aware of how she had to be dressed.
And you also attended her funeral, didn't you? What was that like?
Going to that funeral was one of the most amazing experiences in my life, and then we all filed in, all famous people like Putnam that did all the films, and then I was sitting near to Karl Lagerfeld with David Sassoon, and we all sat in the cathedral, and then Elton John played that amazing song. And the most amazing thing, there we were in this amazing medieval cathedral with thick walls as like 2 yards thick, and you could hear the crowd outside cheering. It was the most amazing experience.
Yeah. What's been your toughest moment? Because in October 2020, you were diagnosed with cancer and you were given 6 months to live. And how did you deal with that news?
What I really don't understand is why I didn't fall to pieces or anything like that. I said to myself, my work's got to be preserved. I formed the Zandra Rhodes Foundation. I told people not to say that I'm supposed to have only 6 months. That was now 5 years ago. And we founded the foundation to look after all of the clothes, the 6,000 clothes that we've produced. And some of them are going to different museums across the world, like the Powerhouse in Australia, where I did a collection based on Australia, and to the V&A, and the Met in New York. And then the foundation will look after my legacy, and this whole room will be for people to study me. But I'm still here, so they only can study me live at the moment.
And aren't we all very lucky to have you here? You're absolutely wonderful, Zandra. Just to wrap things up, I'd love you to teach me, please, what your mantra is. What's your secret? What do you live by? Because it's fabulous.
Well, my mother had the most wonderful saying of all, which was, good, better, best, never let it rest till your good is better and your better best.
I love that. Goosebumps. Dame Zandra Rhodes, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting us into your home and for talking to us about your remarkable career. You're just a joy, an absolute pleasure, a joy. Thank you very much.
It's been wonderful to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again to the wonderful Dame Zandra Rhodes there. Well, let's head over now to Istanbul for this week's In Focus, where we explore the immersive and dramatic work of Japanese artist Chiharu Shiota.
Amid a web of red threads and old suitcases, Chiharu Shiota's installation Between Worlds creates a space that lingers between the seen and the unseen. Invited by Istanbul Modern to mark 100 years of diplomatic ties between Japan and Turkey, Shiota draws on her own migration story from Japan to Germany. Her intricate exploration of memory, identity, and belonging takes place against the backdrop of Istanbul, a city divided between 2 continents.
This installation, titled Between Worlds, is uniquely tailored to this venue and the city of Istanbul. We see forms that allude to our location at the crossroads of Asia and Europe, as well as to the journey, the voyage, the sea, the waves, and the fishing nets that all are associated with this waterway.
Here, Shiota's signature red strings, which resemble metaphorical veins, create an immersive maze. She also references the concept of invisible string theory, suggesting that people navigate within a web of connections, all linked by unseen networks that bind us together.
Using string is my material, my own material. It's not like painting the brush and the canvas, it's my own material and I can collect everything. I want to connect people to universe.
Shiota's work invites us to consider what home and identity truly mean. These red strings bind together suitcases, each one a stand-in for a person or a moment suspended in time. But in the absence of people, what remains are their stories, emotions, and memories. While the color red symbolizes the pulse of life, its flow through veins and across borders, the suitcases reflect the transience of life, holding objects and histories. With these two primary components, Shiota invites us to reflect on what we carry with us and what we leave behind. Just as Istanbul has served as a crossroads for centuries, Shiota's work mirrors the fluid, ever-changing nature of identity, showing how we are shaped by the places we come from and the places we're going. Hatice Meryem Gelgör, TRT World, Istanbul.
And staying with impressive artwork, British street artist Banksy's back in the news with his former manager and agent Steve Lazaridis recently auctioning off the majority of his treasure trove of Banksy originals and prints in Los Angeles. The auction ended up making nearly $1.5 million. Up for grabs was the original proof print of the famous girl with a balloon, which went for a whopping $104,000, and hooded figure, which nearly doubled its estimate, selling for $78,000. It seems the mysterious king of graffiti, well, he continues to be one of the most popular and headline-grabbing artists of the modern age. So we thought we'd bring you our top 5 rundown of original Banksys graffitied across our capital. At number 5, the Hungry Pelicans. This was the 5th edition to Banksy's 9-day animal graffiti spree across London back in August. The pair of pelicans can be found above this fish and chip shop in Walthamstow. At number 4, it's If Graffiti Changed Anything, It'd Be Illegal. This very famous artwork appeared in swanky Fitzrovia in central London back in 2011 and features one of his iconic rats. Like much of his work, it was covered in plexiglass to protect it from vandalism. At number 3, Sweeping It Under the Carpet in Camden, another major piece by the guerrilla artist from back in 2006. It depicts a maid cleaning up. It's said to be a political comment on the West, avoiding tackling the tough issues facing society. At number 2, it's Banksy's tree mural. It appeared in Finsbury Park in North London in March this year and features swathes of green paint on a building behind a tree, creating the illusion of foliage. And at number 1, it's the final artwork of the elusive artist's recent animal graffiti spree, which he saved for a wall just outside London Zoo in Regent's Park. It immediately drew huge crowds desperate to see his depiction of a gorilla helping animals escape from the zoo. Well, hopefully that gives you some Banksy hunting inspiration. Up next, it's InStyle, and this week we pop down to one of the world's most stylish hotels. Nestled on the banks of the River Thames, it's steeped in history, and this is one for all you Bond fans out there. It was once the centre of Britain's espionage history. And to tell us all about it, Head of Communications, Fiona Harris. Now, Fiona, this hotel is brimming with history, not least the suite that we're in here now, the Granville Suite. Tell us about that.
You're absolutely right. We're sitting in the Granville Suite, named after a lady called Christine Granville. She was reputedly Churchill's favourite spy. She joined the Special Operations Executive during the Second World War, which was the organisation for spies in Europe. She was a Polish aristocrat originally, and at the outbreak of the Second World War, she wanted to do her bit to free Europe. So she joined up and she worked behind enemy lines, and there are stories of her secreting enemy files in her gloves and skiing across the mountains to get them into the Allied hands. So this suite is really named after her. So that was the function of this room originally. And of course, today, now it's a hotel, we want to honour these amazing women that were spies during the Second World War, and Christine Granville chief amongst them. We've got 8 other rooms here, which are spy suites, as we call them, named after notable women and female spies during the Second World War.
And the old War Office was key to the founding of MI5 and MI6.
You're absolutely right. Again, if you go back to 1909, the Secret Service Bureau was headed by a gentleman in those days called Mansfield Cumming, who is quite famous and reputedly the inspiration for M in the Bond series. Now, he was quite an incredible man. He used to interview spies and had a very unusual technique. Halfway through the interview, he'd get a paper knife and start pushing it or stabbing it into his leg. If you reacted like you've reacted, you were not made of strong enough stuff to be a spy. But what you wouldn't know is that it was a peg leg. It was a wooden leg. He'd lost it in an accident, so it didn't touch him or hurt him at all. But he was the head, and it went on to form MI6, and his colleague Vernon Kell went on to form MI5. So the original spy services were housed and thought up in this building.
I hear this is the building where Ian Fleming dreamt up his famous character James Bond, James 007 Bond, no less.
Correct. So Ian Fleming lived very close by with his brother Peter Fleming. Ian Fleming was in naval intelligence, so he would have been based in the Admiralty just across the other side of Whitehall. However, he would have come in and out of this building regularly, or the British Military Library. And that's where lots of documents would have existed, which he would have checked and looked at for his intelligence and strategy, which helped shape some of the Bond books.
And a lot of the James Bond films have been filmed here as well, haven't they?
Yes, there are 5 scenes from different Bond movies which have actually been filmed on site. So Octopussy, for example, No Time to Die, Skyfall. In fact, there's a very famous scene where Daniel Craig stands on the roof overlooking the roofscape of Whitehall, but it overlooks the roof of the old War Office.
Oh, wow. And also, there's secret spies, invitation only, speakeasy?
Yes, so in the basement in room 007, which actually was room 007 on the original floor plans in 1906, 2 years before Fleming was even born, there is now a speakeasy subterranean bar called the Spy Bar, and there's an incredible half of an Aston Martin on the wall behind the bar. The purpose of this room is quite incredible because it was originally used to store the spy documentation for the spies of the SOE and then later MI5 and MI6. So if you were a spy, you might have 3, 4 or 5, 6 different identities, and those would have been stored in those rooms, 007 and 006, now the Spy Bar.
Wow, what a fabulous bar. Yeah. And who goes to that bar? It must be pretty exclusive.
Only need to know, I'm afraid.
So a lot of celebrities then. And when it was sold, how long did it take for the refurbishment and turning it into a hotel, and how much did it cost?
So what's fascinating about this is the original building took 7 years to build, but the refurbishment or renovation, if you like, on a grand scale took 8 years, so 1 year longer. And in fact, next to the British Olympic Village in 2012, this is the site that had the most amount of workmen and women and craftsmen on site for 8 years. So roughly 1,000 to 1,500 workmen and women on site for all of those years. So it was surrounded by hoardings. People would have walked past and perhaps not realised the industry that was going on behind, with restoring all of the historic plasterwork, woodwork, tessellated mosaics. Each floor has got a different pattern of mosaics on it, 2.5 miles of corridors. In fact, the corridors are broad because back in the day when it was the administrative headquarters for the Army Boy Scouts, used to cycle along the corridors delivering messages to the Army generals. So there's so much history here, and every single aspect of that was restored by these workmen and women and craftsmen. So quite an incredible feat. And then, you know, for this building to be shut to the public for over 120 years, then to be open as a new destination with a hotel, restaurants and private residences is quite the achievement.
And how much did that all cost?
It's reputed 1.4 to 1.6 billion. I don't think we'll ever quite know, but it is absolutely a passion project for the owners, and they wanted to really restore this as a legacy for London. If you think about a lot of these historic buildings, they do need lots of love and care and restoration, and this really has had all of that poured into it, so it now can be visited by people from all over the world.
Fiona, it's been so fascinating. Thank you very much for welcoming us into this incredible hotel, this amazing building steeped in so much history. It's been incredibly interesting.
Our pleasure, thank you.
The very cool Raffles Hotel there. Right, let's catch up on the entertainment news roundup now in this week's Snapshot. The Palestine Film Festival is in full flow here in London, shining a light on contemporary Palestinian cinema. It presents a selection of this year's most anticipated films, putting the spotlight on stories of political realities as experienced by Palestinians. And here we are with the man behind the festival. It's founder and director Dame Zandra. Dame, thank you very much for talking to us. Now, you started the Palestine Film Festival way back in the 90s. What was it all about? Why did you first set it up?
At the time, we believed that there is a need for exhibiting the Palestinian films or films on Palestine. There was hardly any films screened in the capital in London. And we thought there is enough audience for that to start such an initiative. As you see today, it's been growing as we go.
Much larger now, as you mentioned there, and also a lot more important, presumably, given what's going on in Gaza.
Of course, but also the issue of Palestine always been important. And for the sad news, and there is more interest from the public to see more things about Palestine through the films and the cinema. So that's been also growing, and we can see new audiences have interest to come and see other aspects of Palestinian life, learning more about Palestine in terms of culture, in terms of politics, in terms of society. And the films are the best tool to give extra education or extra enlightenment for the audiences to know more about the Palestine cause and the Palestinian people as a whole. Yeah.
So how important is film in highlighting not only what's happening in Gaza, but also in Palestine as a whole?
I mean, film for us as Palestinians is another tool of resistance, you know. So it also has a beautiful impact in our struggle as a whole community, either in Palestine or in the diaspora. And continuing to strengthen the Palestinian films as the resistance is continuing, it's important for the ultimate goal of having our independence and our freedom.
And how's it being received?
The film festival always been received incredibly well. We have a beautiful variety of audiences coming to our festival from different communities of London. Young people have been noticed strongly attending the festival, and that's very motivating and very encouraging for us.
Well, this festival sounds fantastic. Best of luck with the rest of it, and it sounds like a very important festival as well, so we really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
The festival ends with a multi-cinema screening of From Ground Zero, initiated by Palestinian director Rashid Mashrawi. It's a collection of 22 short films made in Gaza over the past year. And that's not the only movie action in town, as the hugely anticipated film Wicked premiered in London. Here are just some of the magical highlights.
You're green. I am.
Together we're unlimited.
She had her secrets.
I never want it to end. I just want to go for all eternity, one city to another. How many cities on earth are there that we can premiere this? I want to take it to every city. I don't want to stop.
It was really important to everybody that this not just be wicked, but this be really good and really wonderful and do justice to the show that everyone loves so much. And as soon as I was sure that everyone was on the same page, I was so relieved, because it means a lot to me too. So I don't know, it's a lot of pressure, but I hope that people feel like we lived up to it.
First of all, I'm not a professional singer. Then I thought, Ariana Grande, Cynthia Erivo, my God, they are the true most amazing singers. But fortunately, John M. Chu is like, I would do anything for this amazing filmmaker. So, it turned out to be one of the most satisfying experiences, because I got to do something that I really enjoyed.
Well, let's head over to Esra now in Istanbul for more Snapshot news.
Thank you, Rhiannon. The 2025 Grammy nominations are here, and it's safe to say that female artists took the top spots. Beyoncé led this year's Grammy Award nominations with 11 nods. The 43-year-old, who is the most Grammy Award-winning artist in history, snagged nominations for Album of the Year with Cowboy Carter, Record of the Year and Song of the Year for her chart hit Texas Hold'em. If she takes home Album of the Year, she'll be the first Black woman to do so in the 21st century. Close behind Beyoncé are Billie Eilish with 7 nominations and Post Malone, Kendrick Lamar and Charli XCX, who also each scored 7. Billie Eilish continues to make history as the only artist to have her first 3 albums nominated for Album of the Year. Taylor Swift, Sabrina Carpenter and Chappell Roan follow with 6 nods each. And the winners will be announced on February 2nd, so let the countdown begin, and back to you, Rhiannon.
Thank you, Esther. Teşekkürler. Well, that's it from all of us here at Showcase. A big thank you to the wonderful Dame Zandra Rhodes and all of our guests this week. Next week on Showcase, we'll have more exclusive interviews and, of course, we'll be filling you in on all the entertainment news in our weekly Snapshot Roundup. We'll see you then.